everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Review. How are you? Today we're talking about a show that has been warmly received both in Korea and abroad. We're talking about TVN's Our Unwritten Soul. So today we're talking more about the themes of Our Unwritten Soul, because I think Our Unwritten Soul is a very strong show thematically. If you guys want to know a little bit more about the technical parts, so performances, cinematography and editing, stop by the Blossom Review. We have our complete review over there. I'll leave a link in the description. If you haven't watched the show yet, this is the story of Yoo Mi-ji and Yoo Mi-rae, both perfectly played by the great Park Bo-young, 30-year-old twin sisters who might look identical but who have completely different lives and personalities. While Mi-rae is a perfectionist, diligent employee working a corporate job, Mi-ji is a laid-back, go-with-the-flow sort of person, especially after the end of her career as a track athlete. When Mi-rae finds herself in a really tight spot, Mi-ji and Mi-rae decide to swap identities, giving each other the space they need to rediscover who they really want to be. Through a narrative that emphasizes contrast and continuous cycles, Our Unwritten Soul proposes a poignant, hopeful, and compassionate tale. Even though its mechanisms might feel a bit far-fetched or repetitive at times, Mi-ji and Mi-rae's journey offers a vulnerable exploration of our innermost torments and a healthy dose of faith that we can all overcome them. So superficially, Mi-ji and Mi-rae's identity swap serves to encourage the development of empathy between these two sisters who have grown apart in their adulthood. They hid all their struggles and their sadness behind this imposed facade of the person the world believes them to be. So they don't really know about each other's sadness, they don't really know about each other's sorrow, about each other's struggles. Once Mi-ji catches a glimpse of her sister's suffering, her idea to swap places allows them to rediscover who they are, as well as rediscover who their sister is, by having them literally live in each other's shoes for a while. So they start fighting each other's battles, which forces them to look at their own pasts and at the world around them with a different perspective. So first, Our Unwritten Soul is a story about identity and empathy. However, the show goes beyond our main sisters, reflecting their emotional turmoil in the characters around them. This applies especially to childhood friend and lawyer Lee Ho-soo, played by the endlessly charismatic Jin-young, and their mother Ok-hee, played by Jang-young-nam. Once you peel back that initial layer, you will realize that the narrative expands to explore human connection, intergenerational trauma, and self-perception. Through Grandma Woo-sung, played by Cha Min-kyung, Ok-hee, Mi-ji, and Mi-rae, Our Unwritten Soul illustrates how sorrow affects generation after generation. They pass down learned behaviors that, instead of healing wounds, only allow them to fester even further. This vicious cycle is eventually broken only once they learn how to open themselves up to the people around them, how to cherish these bonds, and how to establish open lines of communication. This need for connection in the process of healing is also seen very, very clearly in Ho-soo's character, a young man who sees himself as a burden instead of a loved son and a friend. Connection for these characters is only a tool through which they can reevaluate their sense of self. At its core, Our Unwritten Soul is a story about self-perception. It's about how important it is for us to be kind and patient and understanding and compassionate towards our own flaws, our own timing, our own process of growth. It reminds us to celebrate our little victories and our small displays of strength and courage. It is only once these characters rediscover who they are, change their self-perception, that they can shed their ghosts and grow out of their misery. Because the one thing that is stopping them from living a life that really matters to them, that really makes them happy, is the lack of confidence and respect that they unconsciously feel towards their own selves. Our Unwritten Seoul portrays depression, trauma, and workplace bullying with sensitivity, allowing its characters to be vulnerable and confused and lost without ever being overly melodramatic. It features a mostly female cast who is often seen helping each other, which is an absolute delight to watch. But I think most importantly, Our Unwritten Seoul breaks away from convention by naturally including disability and queerness in its narrative without pity or fanfare, establishing a fairly diverse characterization as a matter of course. These elements and themes are presented through a very basic but not perfect chiastic structure. If you don't know what that means, chiastic structure is a literary technique of repetitive symmetry designed to create insight and resonance through both comparison and contrast. That is, the story allows its elements to mirror one another in reverse order. And what does that mean in this particular series? In Our Unwritten Seoul, we end where we began, but now in a completely different, clearly proved world. Mi-ji, who started out lost in the countryside, now lives a life full of purpose and full of meaning in Seoul. Meanwhile, Mire, who started out living a life full of meaning and full of purpose in appearance in Seoul, now lives in the countryside while discovering her skills and future goals. You can also see that very clearly in how Hosu's final conflict mirrors Mi-ji's initial conflict to a T. So the narrative is full of these contrasting elements that serve to emphasize this idea of life cycles and constant evolution, because Our Unwritten Seoul is a reminder that we all struggle, yes, but we can all find our way out eventually. We just have to keep on writing our own stories. So while the show is very cohesive and very effective thematically, Our Unwritten Seoul does have a couple of narrative flaws, let's say. Our Unwritten Seoul relies on repetitive conflicts that revolve around mistrust, miscommunication, and misunderstanding over and over and over and over again. These conflicts these conflicts happen up until episode 11 out of 12, and their repetition makes them feel more like plot devices than a natural part of the development of the narrative. By keeping the same conflicts to the very end, Our Unwritten Seoul fails to illustrate, fails to portray consistent and permanent change in these characters, giving all solutions a flair of the miraculous. This happens especially with Mi-ji and Hosu's growth. Why? Because these two characters were portrayed for most of the series as two people who are full of traumas and complexes that would even or could even hinder their ability to maintain a healthy romantic relationship. But by the end of the series, by the last episode, these traumas and complexes seem to have vanished into thin air, as if they could have been healed. Like this. Ta-da! Once again, romantic love seems to be the solution to all problems, which returns the show to a more cliched approach to the topic. The idea that two broken pieces complete each other is more romantic idealism than a rational path for someone facing the same struggles in real life. Now, to be honest, Mire's journey is a lot more realistic, as she's also a character who is full of traumas. But at the end of the show, instead of looking like, oh, everything's perfectly fine now, she is still a character who is in the middle of this process of healing. You see that she's still rebuilding her confidence, and you see that she's working on herself more actively. Now, the show does require a bit of suspension of disbelief when it comes to the identity swap, especially when we're talking about the soul side of the story. Why? Because Mire works at a financial management company in a role that apparently requires solid and extensive economic knowledge, and Miji seems to be able to make do with just a couple of all-nighters doing research on Google. So yeah, oh, does that mean that I can do that job without university, without studying, without anything? So Now, it also doesn't help that Miji, especially in the earlier episodes, is super naive for a 30-year-old woman, and she often fails to respond accordingly to situations that only require the common sense of an ordinary functional adult. Also, the dialogue, despite its inspiring quotes, comes off as a bit preachy and rose-colored at times, because everyone, all the time, has a beautifully poetic line to share. So every conversation seems to lead to this wise conclusion, ready to be quoted a million times in the future. It is nice, yes, but I think, in my personal opinion, it could have been done a bit more lightly, let's say. Now, before you hate me forever, I want to say that while the mechanism may be a bit flawed, Our Unwritten Soul succeeds thanks to its emotional depth, its optimism, and its excellent delivery. I think that as long as you connect with the show on an emotional level, I am sure you will appreciate its message, you will enjoy this journey, and you will benefit from Mire and Miji's growth. So the final question is, should you watch Our Unwritten Soul? Our Unwritten Soul offers a character-driven story that knows very well where its heart is. Mire and Miji introduce us to a story about empathy and identity, but one that underneath explores the complexity of depression, intergenerational trauma, human connection, and self-perception. Even though the conflicts and setups might feel a bit flimsy or a bit redundant at times, this is a solid romantic slice of life that has much to share. Full of tenderness and sensitivity, Our Unwritten Soul will surely encourage you to look at yourself and the world around you with kinder and more understanding eyes. Our Unwritten Soul is on Netflix. Quick reminder that this review is also on the Blossom Review. Like I said before, I'll leave the link in the description for you. And over on Substack this week, we reviewed a Japanese drama that you can find on Netflix too, called News Anchor. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to give it a read. Guys, thank you so very much for being here. I hope you leave a comment with your own ideas about Our Unwritten Soul. And I hope that you like this video and you subscribe so I can see you here every week for a new review. Take very good care of yourself, have a lovely day, and I'll see you very soon. Thank you so much. Bye!